Hello and welcome, my name is Haas, and this is another Hearthstone video. This time I wanted to go over the very basics of Hearthstone and explain all the gameplay mechanics you should definitely be aware of. A quick, basics guide, if you will. So, for the obvious place to start, when you first go into a match, after picking one of the currently 9 available heroes or classes, you will randomly go first or second, of course. If you go first, you will be met by 3 cards, and if you go second, you will instead see 4 of them right in front of you. And here you have a partial mulligan. That is to say, you can select any of these cards that you don't think you'll need early on, and trade these for random cards in the hope you get something better. Spoiler though, you often won't, as the dice do seem to really hate you. From that point on, it's time to play your cards, but one thing to note here is that if you are going second, you are a very special person and also get a unique card called the Coin, which allows you to increase your mana pool by 1 for 1 turn. Do use it wisely though, as it can be incredibly useful. Of course, the most important thing to look for though is your health pool. Everyone starts with 30 health at the beginning of the match and, surprise surprise, you win by depleting your enemy's health pool to 0. Shocking, really. Keep in mind that you can at no point go over that 30 starter health. You cannot overheal. But what you can do if you have the right cards or are playing the right class is gain armor. Any damage can be absorbed by armor and you can stack this indefinitely. You will always take armor damage first before taking damage to your health pool. Now, every turn you will first of all get a mana crystal up to a maximum of 10 mana. If you have any cards that increase mana past 10, as is the case with certain druid spells, you will instead get the excess mana card, allowing you to draw a card. Of course, every turn you also get a card, and you can have at any given time 10 cards in your hand. If you get a card while already having 10 in your hand, it will sadly be destroyed and you will be pissed off. And if you run out of cards, you'll take damage every time you have to draw a card. This damage even increases by 1 every time you must draw, including cards that allows you to draw more, so do be careful. Cards themselves come in 3 general types: spells, equipment, and minions. Spells are those nasty, fireball lobbing, sheep polymorphing cards you have in your deck. They are a one-time use card, and there are currently no neutral spells, meaning they are all class specific. They can really do about anything, from destroying your enemies in highly amusing ways to buffing up your own creatures so they can in turn destroy your enemies in highly amusing ways. There are also secret spells, which are cards that are played face down, so you can tell people they've activated your trap card, as that is pretty much what it does. Secrets are currently limited to mages, paladins, and hunters, and you can play any number of secrets at once, but you can't have more than 1 of any secret lying in wait at the same time. Equipment equips your hero with a certain item, mainly all kinds of lovely weapons. Equipment has both an attack value and a durability value, and allows your hero to get into the actual battle him or herself. The attack value decides how much damage you can do, and the durability value will go down by 1 every time you attack. Once this reaches 0, your weapon will explode into tiny bits. One very important thing to keep in mind here is that you are directly putting your hero in danger. If you attack an enemy minion that has an attack value of its own, you will be taking that damage. In addition, your equipment locks up when it is not your turn, meaning you won't do damage back if you get attacked. Then, of course, there are the minion cards, which summon all your lovely permanent servants onto the battlefield. That is, until they get destroyed. Minions have an attack value, which is the amount of damage they can deal out in 1 hit, and a health value, the amount of damage they can take before they perish. Minions enter the battlefield in a state of exhaustion, meaning they cannot attack on the turn they are summoned on. Your side of the battlefield can also not have more than 7 minions on it at any given time. However, minions come in a huge variety with all kinds of abilities and effects. Charge is a relatively simple ability, but can easily be game-changing. Charge allows your creatures to attack as soon as it is summoned. It doesn't suffer from the exhaustion as minions without do. In this instance, I summon a Murloc with Charge. This allows me to destroy his minion, so he can't kill my buffed up minion on the field. Then I summon another creature with Charge and buff him up too, so I can get some extra lovely card draw in. Combined with buffs, Charge can easily win you plenty of games, if not, you're at least annoying your enemy. Taunt is probably gonna be your best friend. A minion with Taunt protects all other minions next to it, and your hero from being attacked by enemy minions or enemy equipment, as they have to focus down the minion with Taunt first. Spells will fling by them, however. In this scenario, I have one rather beefy Taunt creature protecting me from a ton of damage, and the enemy has to brute force his way through it if he wants to hit me. He too, however, has quite a strong Taunt minion on the field, but hey, mind control. I meant to say I have 2 Taunt creatures protecting me. Stealth is a more situational ability. A creature with stealth cannot be targeted by enemy minions, heroes or spells, except area of effect spells. And the stealth effect will remain until you attack with that minion, otherwise it will remain there permanently, which can be really useful when your stealth creature is giving you some nice buffs, for example. Small thing to note here though is that if you buff a stealth creature with Taunt, the Taunt effect will not work until he goes out of stealth. Otherwise you would have some ridiculously untargetable Taunt creature and yeah, no. Now, talking about annoying abilities, Silence is easily the most likely to get your enemy to rage quit. Silence can be used on enemy minions to instantly remove any buffs they might have had. Gone is that Taunt, gone is that extra health and damage. Silence will remove any abilities the minion may have had. Keep in mind though that Silence cannot dispel Hex, Mind Control or Polymorph, the Sheepify ability, and Silence itself cannot be removed either. Silence can of course also be used on your own minions. Why, you might ask? Well, some of these minions are just pretty darn bad. That is until you remove their negatives and suddenly you have some pretty cheap, scary creatures. Freeze is an ability that, freezes enemy minions or heroes. This prevents them from attacking for 1 turn. Simple. Enrage is triggered on a minion whenever it takes damage from any source, including anything you might throw at it yourself. It will then gain a specific buff, which mostly comes in the form of getting a ton more damage. One thing to keep in mind though is that the Enrage requires the minion to be damaged. If it is healed up to full, it will lose that Enrage ability. Combo is currently reserved for rogues only. Combo is an ability where the stated effect occurs when it is not the first card played in a turn. Meaning preferably you play a low cost card first, then follow it up with some combo cards, which might then allow you to do more damage or perhaps buff your creatures more. Overload is currently reserved for the Shamans among us, and is generally a negative effect to offset the low card cost. These spells, weapons, or minions are generally very effective for very little mana, but as a result you will reserve mana for the next turn, and so you have to work with less mana the turn after playing an overload card. One piece of advice here though is that you can overload more mana than you will have the next turn, so use it wisely and you can get some really cheap, really crazy minions out. Spell power does exactly what it says on the can. It increases your spell's power. More specifically, it means you will do more damage with spells. If you have one minion with +1 spell power, your 4 damage card will now do 5 damage instead. This sadly does not affect healing though. Deathrattle is also a more situational ability, the effects of which vary greatly among minions, but it requires your minion to die, so it better be good. Deathrattle is an effect that will trigger upon the death of the minion with Deathrattle. This can be anything from doing damage upon death, allowing you to draw a card upon death, or even allowing you to mind control something upon death. Divine Shield obviously shields your minion. To be more precise, it blocks the next source of damage that the creature with the shiny yellow Divine Shield takes. This can be a measly 1 damage or something like 20 damage. In this instance, I put Divine Shield on one of my lovely Murlocs to destroy the Heathen Murloc without it taking damage itself, and the Divine Shield effect is then removed. The way this Murloc got Divine Shield in the first place was because one of the minions I summoned had the Battle Cry ability. Battle Cry effects vary greatly, but are activated as soon as you summon the minion with Battle Cry. The previous minion had a Battle Cry effect that allowed him to put Divine Shield on an allied minion. Or in the case of this little dragon here, his Battle Cry effect means he will get additional health and attack value for every card in your hand. Then, sort of finally, There is Wind Fury, or Wind Fury, if you will. I know, terrible. Wind Fury allows a minion to attack twice every turn. If you can time this well with some buffs, you can easily catch an opponent completely off guard and throw a terrible amount of damage in his direction. Of course, creatures with Wind Fury will still take damage every time they attack an enemy minion. I said sort of, as there are a few more. Choose One is a pretty obvious one, which is exclusive currently to druids and allows you to pick from one of two outcomes, such as summon something or instead place a buff. Immune is very limited in the game currently, but prevents damage being dealt to it completely, like Ice Block grants your hero immunity for 1 turn. And Summon is an ability where a minion summons another minion, pretty simple. Of course, beyond cards, there are also so-called hero abilities, all specific to each class, and these will always be the same. A mage will have a 1 damage fireball, a priest can do a heal for 2, or a shaman can summon a random totem. These all cost 2 mana and can only be used once per turn. And lastly, as there are no phases in Hearthstone, do keep in mind the actual order and position you play cards in, as it can be incredibly important. For instance, in this clip, I make sure to attack with my buffed up Worgen Infiltrator first. This minion has been buffed up with Blessing of Wisdom, which means it will have me draw a card every time it attacks. I do this before spending any mana, and as a result I pull a Consecration. Or 2, as I actually do the same thing with my Wolf Rider, just for the heck of it. Consecration allows me to do 2 damage to all enemies, including heroes, so I can win right in this turn. Something I couldn't yet if I had used my mana on pretty much anything else. Then keep in mind the positioning is something you can control as well. You can place a minion between or to the left or right of any other minion. Some cards will simply have effects that target the 2 minions next to it, which will be partially wasted of course if you place it incorrectly. Or if you're fighting something like a rogue, they have cards that can cause a middle creature to damage the 2 to the sides, so think about this when you're playing your minions. And with that being said, that should be all the basics of the Hearthstone gameplay, with bits of advanced tips here and there. I hope it helps in one form or another. As always, my name's been Haas, and I'll see you in the next video.
I can see.